My husband Victor pushed the crumpled deed across to me. Nina, sign it. This dump may be half finished, but the land's still worth something. Sell it, take the money and go, don't stay here and suffer with a blind man like me. I pinched the pen, staring at his unfocused eyes, my chest churning with a bitter ache. Just as I was about to put pen to paper, a childish roar burst from my belly. Mom! Stop! Don't sign it for the love of God. This isn't a dump, it's our family's Noah's Ark for the future. In 2 weeks the deep freeze will hit, temperatures will plunge to -50 degrees. There's a geothermal hot spring under this house, the only place in the whole city where you can survive. That green tea bitch in the white dress over there is reborn. She knows the secret and is waiting for you to sign so she can swoop in and snatch it. In our last life she tricked us out here and we froze into ice sculptures. My hand trembled, and the pen tip scored a long crack across the paper. I looked up to see my stepsister Sophie standing rigidly behind Victor, staring fixedly at my hand. I tossed the pen aside and sneered, I'm not signing. From then on, I, Nina, transformed from a meek, easily bullied innocent into a man-defending maniac. I tore the deed to shreds. Sophie's expression froze, she took an eager step forward. Sis, what are you doing? This is for brother-in-law's own good. Brother-in-law can't see now, the Gu family kicked him out, and you're buried in debt. If you don't sell this crappy house, how do you expect to eat? The little one in my belly grew restless again. Ugh. What a wicked woman. Keep pretending. You must be so pleased with yourself. Those old Gu family fools are blind, treating this treasure like trash and throwing it to Dad. Mom, hurry and kick her out. Just seeing her makes me nauseous, this is a pregnancy gagging warning. I took a deep breath, forcing down the churn in my stomach, stood up and stepped in front of Victor. This is my and Victor's home. Whether it gets sold is none of your business. I pointed at the front door, my tone hard. Now, right now, get out. Sophie widened her eyes. The old me would always be meek and timid, afraid of displeasing Gu Jia. Today she actually dared to speak to her like that. She gritted her teeth, turned to Victor and looked wronged. Brother-in-law, look at my sister, I was only trying to be kind. Although Victor couldn't see, his expression darkened. He groped for and grabbed my hand. Sophie, if Nina doesn't want to sell, then don't sell. You are not welcome here, please leave. Sophie stamped her foot in anger and glared at me viciously. Fine. Nina, don't say I didn't warn you. In a few days when the creditors come calling, let's see how you cry. She stomped off in her high heels, slamming the front door so hard it shook. I looked around at the unfinished villa with its bare concrete gray walls. This was the inheritance the Gu family had allotted to Victor. Besides this half-built, roofless wreck on the hillside, Victor only had 50,000 yuan in savings. But I wasn't worried at all. Because I had a bug. I touched my slightly rounded belly and silently mouthed, Son, is what you said true? Is the deep freeze really coming? Absolutely true. Mom, don't just stand there. We're broke as can be right now, we need to think of ways to get money and stock up. This house is drafty on all sides. We need to put in glass, seal the roof, and buy coal. Without those things, even with hot springs we'd still catch a cold. Victor felt my silence and thought I regretted it. He let go of my hand and smiled bitterly. Nina, actually Sophie was right. Keeping this house is useless. If you... I squeezed his hand back and cut him off. Victor, do you trust me? He froze for a moment, his eyes hollow as he looked at me. When have I ever doubted you? Okay. I bit my lip and made a reckless decision. Then give me the remaining 50,000, and go pawn those few name-brand watches of yours. We need to renovate and buy a lot of things. Victor didn't hesitate at all, he pulled a bank card from his pocket and pressed it into my hand. The pin is your birthday. Do whatever you want, if you lose it all, worst case we'll go beg on the street. I looked at the thin card in my hand, my eyes heating up. This man, even reduced to such a state, even blind, still entrusted his entire fortune and life to me. If my son says there are geothermal hot springs here, then I'm going to turn this unfinished building into a fortress as solid as an iron bucket. I picked up my phone and dialed a contractor I knew before. Marcus, bring your crew, bring the best materials, come to the Half Mountain Villa immediately. I want the roof completed, bulletproof glass installed, and the insulation layers thickened. Money? First I'll pawn my jewelry to you. If that's not enough I'll find another way. Just do the work fast, and I'll double your pay. When Marcus led the crew onto the site, the way he looked at me was like he was looking at an idiot. The villa sat on a barren hill on the outskirts of town. The Gu family had originally developed the area for a resort, but when their funding fell through it turned into nothing but a mess. Now the Gu family had dumped it on Victor, clearly intending to let him sink or swim on his own. Miss Nina, this house leaks wind and rain, are you really going to spend a fortune fixing it? Marcus rubbed the rough cement wall and shook his head repeatedly. If you throw money at it like that, you won't even hear a peep back. I ignored his doubts and slapped the blueprints on the table. Do it according to these. Replace all the windows with triple-layer vacuum blast-resistant glass, and add 10 cm thick insulation boards to both the interior and exterior of the walls. All the pipes must be freeze-protected, and install 2 independent ventilation systems. Marcus stared at the plans, his eyes nearly popping out. This specification, are you trying to guard against a nuclear bomb? I smiled. I'm afraid of the cold, is that not allowed? The little one in my belly was acting as my foreman. Mom. That exhaust vent needs to be higher. When the snow gets deep it'll get blocked. And that door. Replace it with a heavy steel door. That woman Sophie will definitely bring people to pry it open. In her past life she even brought a locksmith. I immediately added to Marcus, change the front gate, get one of those bank vault grade security doors. Also, raise the perimeter wall by 2 meters and string it with electrified barbed wire on top. Marcus swallowed, stopped asking questions, and turned to tell the workers to get started. As long as the money was in place, there was no job that couldn't be done. After arranging the renovations, I dragged Victor to a pawnshop in the city. The watches Victor had collected before, plus my few designer bags, were all converted into cash. It totaled $3 million. That amount might not buy much in ordinary times, but in a situation where no one expected disaster, its purchasing power was still strong. I rented a large truck and headed straight for the wholesale produce market. Mom, rice, flour, grains, and oil are essentials. Don't forget to buy high-calorie stuff. Chocolate. Lunch and meat. Candy. Coal. Coal is the most important. That stuff will be black gold later. Also get a generator. Buy a diesel generator, make it a silent one. I held a small notebook, listening to my son's orders while frantically placing orders. Boss, 5 tons of rice. 3 tons of flour. 100 drums of cooking oil. Those military compressed biscuits, whatever you have, I want it all. The wholesale boss grinned from ear to ear, assuming I was a buyer from some cafeteria. I had no time to explain. I paid the deposit and told them to deliver to the mountainside villa. Next was the coal market. Coal prices were shockingly low now. After all, it was summer and no one was buying the stuff. I ordered 50 tons of anthracite in one go, which left the owner speechless. Miss, are you planning to fire a brick kiln? I run a barbecue joint, I lied without thinking. By the time we hauled the supplies back to the villa, it was already late at night. Victor sat by the newly installed fireplace in the living room, listening to the sounds of the workers moving things outside, his brow furrowed. Nina, how much did you buy? I went over, sat down beside him, and handed him a cup of hot water. Enough to feed us for 3 years. Victor fell silent. Although he couldn't see, his hearing was extraordinarily acute. The sounds of heavy objects hitting the floor were definitely not just ordinary construction materials. Could something be wrong? He suddenly grabbed my hand, his tone serious. I hesitated. Should I tell him the truth? If I didn't, such a commotion wouldn't stay hidden. If I did, would he think I was crazy? Mom, tell Dad. He's blind but not stupid. Besides, Dad's really capable, he knows how to set up security. In my last life, even though Dad couldn't see, his hearing had evolved extraordinarily. Several times he heard Sophie coming with people ahead of time, and that's how we managed to dodge them. Hearing my son say that, I felt reassured. I leaned close to Victor's ear and lowered my voice. Victor, what if I told you that in half a month this world will become an ice age, would you believe me? Victor's fingers went rigid for a moment. He didn't immediately deny it, nor did he laugh at me. After a long pause, he slowly said, if you say it, I'll believe it. Do you need me to do anything? At that moment, the stone in my heart finally fell. This was my husband. No matter what absurd things I said, he would stand behind me unconditionally. We need weapons, I said, and we need to clear out the basement. Our son says there's a hot spring down there. Victor didn't ask who our son was, nor how I knew. He just nodded, stood up, and said, I know where the entrance to the basement is. Follow me. For the next few days, Victor and I were as busy as two spinning tops. Although Victor couldn't see, he knew the structure of this house like the back of his hand. Back when he still had influence at the Gu family, he personally oversaw the blueprints for this building. He led me to a concealed entrance to the basement, which had been completely blocked by a pile of construction debris. When we cleared the rubbish, a rush of hot air hit us in the face. Sure enough, there was a hot spring. And it was a natural spring, the water scalding hot and steaming vigorously. The little guy in my belly writhed with excitement. Yes. This is it. This is natural underfloor heating. Just hook up the pipes so hot water circulates through the whole house, let it freeze solid outside, we'll be wearing short sleeves inside. I immediately had the basement cleaned out and hired a professional to install the circulation pump and piping. At the same time, Victor used his old contacts to procure a batch of special renovation materials. High-strength composite bows, stab-proof vests, and a few specially made batons. Although he couldn't see, his ability to locate things by sound was extremely sharp. I'd watched him practice with a baton in the yard. With a single swing he would smash a glass bottle thrown 10 meters away with unerring accuracy. Just as we were in the thick of preparations, Sophie showed up again. This time she didn't come alone, she brought a lawyer in a suit. By now the villa's exterior walls had been raised, and the gate had been replaced with a heavy steel door. Sophie stood at the gate, looking at the building that now resembled a fortress. A flicker of astonishment crossed her eyes, followed by a deeper jealousy. Nina. Open the door for me. She was frantically pressing the doorbell outside. I opened the video intercom and, looking at her distorted face, felt inexplicably pleased. Something up? You crazy woman, you actually have money to renovate? Did you steal money from the Gu family? Sophie pointed at the lawyer. This is Lawyer Wang. The Gu family now suspects Victor of embezzling funds and intends to reclaim this house to settle the debt. I sneered, that woman really hadn't held back her spite. Mom, she's tricking you. The Gu family didn't audit the accounts at all, she forged the documents herself. She's panicking. She must feel the temperature dropping and is trying to snatch the house before the deep freeze comes. I checked the weather forecast. Indeed, although it's August, today's temperature was only 20 degrees, a full 10 degrees lower than yesterday. People on the street only felt it was cool, they had no idea it was an omen of disaster. Embezzled public funds? I sneered into the microphone. Where's the evidence? If you can't produce it, get lost. Victor's already been driven out of the Gu family. The house is written in black and white in his name. You want to take it? Not a chance. Lawyer Wang adjusted his glasses, all businesslike. Miss Nina, if you don't cooperate, we'll have no choice but to apply to the court for compulsory enforcement. Go ahead and apply. I was fearless. Even if the court moves fastest, it still takes at least half a month, by then, will you even be alive to reclaim the house? Sophie's face changed. She had clearly understood the implication behind my words. Half a month, by then the extreme cold would have already set in, the whole social order would have collapsed, and who would care about a court ruling? Nina, don't make a fool of yourself. Sophie snapped, suddenly ordering the 2 bodyguards behind her, prise the door open for me. I refuse to believe she can't be handled. The 2 bodyguards produced crowbars and started working on my front door. Bang! Bang! The steel door responded with dull thuds, but didn't budge an inch. This was the blast-proof door I'd paid a small fortune for. Crowbars wouldn't do it, and even explosives might not blow it open. I glanced at Victor, who was sitting on the sofa. He was quietly wiping down the compound bow, his face utterly expressionless. Nina, pull up the circuit breaker, he said coolly. I froze for a moment, then reacted. The electrified fence on the wall. I walked to the control panel and, without hesitation, pushed the breaker up. Zzz, 2 miserable screams came from outside. The 2 bodyguards trying to climb the wall had barely touched the barbed wire before convulsing from the shock and falling off the wall. Sophie screamed in terror and stumbled backward. Murder! Nina, how could you kill someone? I said coldly into the microphone, this is private property. Trespassers will bear the consequences. If you don't get out now, I'll crank the voltage up to the maximum. Sophie looked at the bodyguard foaming at the mouth on the floor, then at the tightly shut steel door, and finally she was afraid. She shot me a venomous glare, spat out just you wait, and fled in disgrace with her people. Nice work. Mom. That felt great. That wicked woman deserved a lesson. But she sure won't let this go, we need to hurry and get the rest of the supplies inside. I switched off the intercom, my palms slick with sweat. Though I had acted tough a moment ago, I knew the real fight was only beginning. Since Sophie had been reborn, she must know how terrifying extreme cold can be. To survive, she would stop at nothing. And we had to be harder than she was. After Sophie's stunt, I dared not slacken. For the next few days I hardly slept, stocking up relentlessly. Apart from food and supplies, I even went on a sweep through the pharmacy. I emptied the shelves of every common medicine I could buy, cold remedies, anti-inflammatories, vitamins, gauze, and alcohol. Victor wasn't idle either. He set up a lot of simple traps around the villa. Some were nailboards buried in the grass, others were bells hung in the trees. As soon as anyone came near, we'd know at once. Where the unfinished building originally had no walls, he had workers build them up with bricks and stone, leaving only one concealed back gate. As time went on, the weather grew increasingly strange. What should have been August's oppressive heat instead plunged day by day. It fell from 20 degrees to 10, then down to 5. The people in short sleeves disappeared from the streets, everyone dug out their autumn shirts and long underwear. The news began reporting unusual cold snaps across various regions, and experts argued over whether this was an aberrant expression of El Niño. Only I knew this wasn't an anomaly, it was the end of the world. On the last day, I settled everyone's wages and slipped each worker an extra 2,000 yuan in a red envelope. Go home, buy more food, I said. The weather's not right lately. There was nothing more I could do, whether they believed it or not was beyond my control. After sending the workers off, I locked the front door and drew every curtain closed. The underfloor heating was already on, the hot spring water circulating through the pipes, and the whole room felt as warm as spring. Victor and I sat in the living room piled with supplies, watching the news on the television. Outside, snowflakes had begun to fall. At first it was just a scattering of flurries, but soon it turned into driving, downy snow. The wind howled, like ghosts wailing and wolves baying. She's coming. Mom. A polar vortex is coming. Tonight the temperature will plummet to -30 degrees. Tomorrow it'll be -50. That green tea bitch is definitely scrabbling to find somewhere to hide. I gripped Victor's hand nervously. He took my hand in his, palm warm and dry. Don't be afraid, we're home. Right then the phone rang. It was a voice message from Sophie. The background was all wind and chattering teeth. Sis, let me in, please, it's so cold out. I know I was wrong. I'll never do it again, you're my real sister. I listened to that trembling voice and felt not a flicker of emotion. In my previous life, when Victor and I pleaded with her in the snow to open the door, what did she say? She said, "Oh, sister, there isn't enough food in the house. With 2 more mouths to feed, how are we supposed to live? You might as well freeze to death outside, it'll save some grain." I can still remember that despair as clearly as if it were yesterday. I turned my phone off and tossed it aside. Sleep. I hauled Victor to his feet. Tonight, even if the sky falls, don't open the door. That night, wind and snow raged. The whole city seemed to be instantaneously frozen by an invisible giant hand. The power grid collapsed in the dead of night, and the surroundings fell into a deathly silence of darkness. Only from my home's windows did a faint, warm light spill out. The generator ran steadily in the basement, and flames danced in the fireplace. I lay in bed, listening to the dull thud of the gale pounding against the blast-resistant glass outside, and for the first time felt an unprecedented sense of peace. In this life, I had finally kept my home. When I woke the next day, the world had already changed. Peering out through the crack in the window, everything was white. The snow had piled up at least a meter deep, trees along the roadside were snapped, vehicles buried, and the whole city looked like a gigantic ice-carved tomb. The indoor thermometer read 22 degrees, while the outdoor gauge had blown past its limit, frozen with the needle stuck at the -50 mark. I cooked a pot of steaming millet porridge, fried a few eggs, and made a plate of luncheon meat sizzling with oil. The aroma spread throughout the apartment. Victor sat at the table, sipping his porridge with unhurried grace. Though he could not see, his manner of eating remained as elegant as a nobleman's. "The power's out," he said. The neighborhood chat's already blown up." I took out my spare phone, connected to the home's satellite network, and opened the residents group. The group was full of wails. "What's going on? Why did it get so cold all of a sudden? My water pipes have burst from freezing. Where's the property management? Why has the heating stopped? It's summer, for heaven's sake. Does anyone have extra blankets? I'll pay top dollar. My child is crying from the cold." Panic spread like a virus. Many households had no warm clothes at all, let alone heating equipment. In such extreme cold, without heating an ordinary house would quickly become an icebox. I watched in silence. Speaking up now to reveal I had supplies would be a death wish. Just then the villa's gate monitor chimed. A few figures appeared on the screen. It was Sophie, the lawyer from yesterday, and several burly men I didn't recognize. They were bundled in heavy down jackets and even wrapped in quilts, looking like a flock of refugee penguins. Sophie's face was blue-purple from the cold, frost clinging to her eyebrows. She was holding a stone, beating desperately on my front door. "Nina. I know you're in there. You've got electricity. You've got heating. Open the door. Or we won't be polite." Her voice was hoarse, edged with a kind of madness. Clearly, she had truly been driven to the edge. Victor put down his spoon, his brow creasing slightly. "They're not giving up yet." I sneered, "Then let them give up completely." I switched on the loudspeaker, my voice carried outside. "Sophie, do you not understand human speech? This is my house, you're not welcome here." "Nina. You cold-blooded bitch." Sophie screamed hysterically from outside. "I'm your sister. Are you really going to stand by and watch me freeze to death?" "You never cared whether I lived or died back then either," I said calmly. "That was in a past life. I haven't even harmed you in this one." Sophie snapped, and in her panic she actually blurted out what was in her heart. The people beside her froze for a moment, looking at her as if she were insane. But they had no time to fuss over past lives or future ones. Survival instincts focused their gaze on the warm villa. The lawyer Wong stepped forward, trembling as he yelled, "Miss Nina, this is a moment of emergency escape. If you don't open the door, we have the right to break it down. The law grants us that right." "Law?" I laughed. "Lawyer Wong, look around, do you really think the law still applies now?" Outside it was deathly silent. The signal towers had long since frozen out, and the emergency lines were completely dead. The police? The rescue teams? They were barely keeping their own heads above water. "Don't waste words on her. Smash it." One of the big fellows had had enough. He raised the sledgehammer in his hands and brought it down hard on the main door. Clang! The massive metallic impact made eardrums ache. A patch of paint flew off the door, but the steel plate held firm. "Keep smashing. I don't believe it won't break." A few people took turns charging forward, wildly attacking the gate. I watched the surveillance feed, still feeling a bit nervous. The gate was solid, but what if? "Mom. Don't be scared. Douse them with water. These idiots, standing outside in -50 degrees, give them a bath." My son's words reminded me. For fire safety, I'd had a high-pressure sprinkler system installed in this villa, the water supply directly connected to the underground hot spring. Although the water that sprayed out was hot, in this kind of temperature, a cold smile tugged at the corner of my mouth. "Since you want to come in, take a hot shower first." I pressed a red button. Several concealed nozzles above the gate suddenly blasted powerful jets of water. Scalding hot spring water drenched the group. At first they froze in surprise, feeling it was rather warm. But the next second, the nightmare began. The water soaked through their down jackets and quilts, then in the -50-degree air, froze instantly. In just a few seconds, the clothes on those people turned into rigid armor. The sodden fabric clung to their skin, and that bone-deep cold could have shattered a person's soul. Ah! Cold! I'm freezing to death. Help! My clothes are frozen on. They let out piercing screams, threw down their tools, and desperately tried to peel off the icy shells clinging to their bodies. Sophie fared even worse. Her hair was wet and had frozen into a lump of ice, making it hard for her to even turn her head. "Nina! You are so cruel," she cried, stumbling backward like a stiff puppet. "Get out!" I shouted into the microphone. "Come any closer and I'll turn you into ice sculptures." A bunch of them fled in a panic. Watching their disheveled backs, I let out a long breath. I turned and saw Victor standing behind me. He hadn't seen what had just happened, but from the sound he could guess the gist. "Nina." He wrapped his arms around me gently. "You did the right thing. When dealing with wolves, you have to be meaner than the wolves." The next half-month passed both slowly and comfortably. Outside was practically hell. Every day someone in the group chat posted an obituary, either frozen to death or starved. Some households that had run out of food began to take desperate risks, prying open neighbors' doors, looting supplies. The once civilized, harmonious residential complex turned into a primitive jungle where the strong preyed on the weak. My home felt like another world. Except for being unable to go outside, our quality of life hadn't dropped at all. We cooked different things every day: hot pot, barbecue, braised spare ribs. The aromas drifted out through the exhaust fan and would probably make any survivors within a few kilometers cry with hunger. But I knew this peace was only temporary. The real crisis lay ahead. Sophie would not let it go, and those ravenous people red-eyed with hunger wouldn't pass up a piece of fat like us. Sure enough, that night, the alarm sounded. Not the doorbell, but the bells Victor had set up outside the wall. Ring, ring, ring. The urgent ringing sounded particularly jarring in the silent night. Victor leapt out of bed in an instant and grabbed the compound bow from under his pillow. "They're here." His voice was terrifyingly calm. I hurriedly pulled on my clothes and leaned toward the monitor. The screen was pitch black, the power was out, the streetlights long dead. But by the light reflecting off the snow I could still make out a dense crowd of shadowy figures. It wasn't just Sophie's group. There were easily 20 or 30 of them. They carried all kinds of weapons, axes, cleavers, iron rods, some even held homemade Molotov cocktails. Leading them was Sophie herself. She was bundled up like a ball, a megaphone in her hand. "Listen up, everyone. This is the place. That woman's house has a generator, heating, and food in the basement. If we break in, we can survive. Everyone, charge. That woman has gone mad. She actually incited the surrounding mob, trying to overwhelm my fortress with sheer numbers. What do we do?" I looked at that black, looming crowd, palms sweating. No matter how solid the door, it couldn't withstand such a frenzied assault. And they had fire. "Don't panic." Victor drew his bow and knocked an arrow, walking to the second-floor balcony. "Nina, give me a report." I took a deep breath and stared at the surveillance screen. Straight in front of the main gate, 10 meters out, 2 people, they're carrying Molotovs. "Got it." Victor relaxed his finger. Whoosh, a sharp arrow sliced through the night, carrying the scream of wind. Smack. The Molotov in one man's hand was shattered by an arrow before he could throw it. Alcohol splashed out and instantly ignited his clothes. Ah! Fire! Fire! He became a man of flame, rolling and screaming in the snow. The crowd immediately fell into chaos. What's going on? An ambush? They've got archers. Sophie shouted from the rear, "Don't be afraid. He's blind. He's just guessing. Everyone, charge together. Set them on fire and burn them. Left, 5 meters, Sophie." I ground out the direction through my teeth. Victor drew his bow again. This time he fired in rapid succession. Swoosh! 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 3 arrows flew out in a trisected pattern. Though it didn't strike Sophie's vital spots, an arrow whizzed past her scalp, shearing off a tangle of hair made ragged by the cold. Another arrow pierced the megaphone in her hand. Sophie was so terrified she dropped to the ground with a scream like a slaughtered pig. A ghost. It's a ghost. Those who had been about to charge were also frozen by the precise archery. A blind man? This was no blind man, this was a sharpshooter. Whoever takes another step forward, the next arrow will be in the brow. Victor stood on the balcony, his voice low, but it carried a chill of lethal intent. At that moment, the little one in my belly wasn't idle either. "Mom. The trap to the left of that wall. Someone's trying to climb over." "Right. There's someone digging a hole on the right." This kid was practically a full map clairvoyant. Following my son's cues, I kept relaying positions to Victor. Victor moved like a precise killing machine, every arrow he loosed hit its mark. The one who climbed the wall got shot through the thigh, the one digging the hole got hit in the butt. We hadn't intended to actually kill anyone, but that kind of deterrent was enough. In less than 10 minutes, the once menacing gang of rioters fell into complete disarray. A scattering of wails lay on the ground, the others stared at the pitch-black, dangerous villa, their eyes full of fear. This was by no means a fat target, this was a barbed iron plate. Seeing the situation lost, Sophie scrambled up and tried to run. Trying to run? My gaze went cold. Leaving this woman alive would be a disaster. Victor, 2 o'clock, that's Sophie. Victor didn't hesitate, drawing the bowstring to its limit once more. This arrow is for us in our past lives. Thwack. The arrow tore through the air. This time it struck Sophie squarely in the calf. She screamed, collapsed into the snow, and couldn't get up again. The others dared not linger, dragging their wounded, they crawled and scrambled into the darkness. After that night, no one dared set their sights on our house again. The villa halfway up the mountain became forbidden ground in this neighborhood. Everyone whispered that a pair of merciless fiends lived inside, the man was a blind archer who never missed, and the woman was a witch of maniacs who practiced sorcery. I couldn't be bothered to explain, such a fearsome reputation sometimes works better than any deadbolt. The bitter cold lasted a month, then 2, life was hard, but the three of us managed fairly comfortably. My belly kept growing, and the little one inside became more and more active. Mom, I want sauerkraut fish. Mom, I want braised pork. I rubbed my stomach and scolded with a laugh, you greedy cat, can you have some ambition? People outside are eating tree bark. Though I said it, Victor still found ways to satisfy me. There was quite a bit of fish and meat left in the freezer. In the month my due date was approaching, the weather finally began to show signs of warming. The temperature had risen to -20 degrees. Still very cold, but for someone who had endured -50, it felt like a blessing. That day, Victor was making a small wooden bed for the unborn child. The villa's front door was suddenly knocked on. Not a violent banging, but a polite, restrained tapping. I opened the surveillance feed and froze. It was the head butler of the Gu family. A few others in thick coats followed him, looking like bodyguards, but what they carried were not weapons, they held gift boxes. Miss Nina, young master, I'm James. The butler bowed to the camera. Master sent me to check on you and bring you some things. The Gu family? The same people who once threw Victor out like trash are now showing up with gifts. Something fishy is definitely going on. Mom. Don't trust that old creep. He's here to beg. The Gu mansion may be grand, but it's terrible at keeping warm, and that spendthrift Sophie already secretly sold off half of their supplies to buy bags. Old Mr. Gu is now sick from the cold and close to dying. They want to bring Dad back to take charge, and at the same time snatch up our supplies. I see. Victor sat beside me, the little wooden crib in his hand sanded smooth and rounded. He didn't even glance up. Tell them to get out. I opened the intercom, my tone cool. Victor isn't here, and there's no young master here either. You've come to the wrong place. The butler grew agitated. Miss Nina, you can't say that. Blood is thicker than water. The master is gravely ill and wants to see the young master one last time. When you kicked Victor out back then, why didn't you talk about blood being thicker than water? I shot back. At that time Victor had just gone blind and you even cut off his medical expenses, afraid he would be a drain on the family. Now that there's nothing to eat or drink, suddenly you remember him? Tell old Master Gu that Victor gave up hope on that snowy night long ago. The Victor of today belongs to only me, Nina. The butler tried soft tactics and failed, his expression changed, but after glancing at the towering walls and the legendary archer, he still didn't dare force his way in. He dawdled at the gate for a long time, and in the end could do nothing but slink away. Victor set down his woodworking and came around to embrace me from behind. His chin rested against the hollow of my shoulder, his voice a little muffled. Nina, thank you. Thank me for what? Thank you for snapping back at him for me. I turned, cupped his face, and looked into those eyes that still had no focal point yet somehow had come alive. You fool, we're family. The day the child was born, it was snowing lightly outside. There was no top-tier medical team and no luxurious delivery suite. Only Victor stayed by my side, holding the sterilized scissors and hot water he had prepared long ago. During the pregnancy we had watched countless birth videos and rehearsed over and over. Though the conditions were Spartan, I wasn't afraid at all. Because I had the most reliable husband in the world, and a miraculous baby who, even before being born, already knew how to protect his mother. When the contractions hit, the pain nearly killed me. Victor held my hand, his palm drenched in sweat, even more nervous than I was. Nina, breathe in, breathe out. The little one inside wasn't idle either, cheering me on. Mom. Push. I can see the head. I'm a big-headed baby, hang in there. Almost there, almost there. One last push. Wah. A loud wail pierced the silence of the villa. It was a big chubby boy. Victor took the child with trembling hands, tears streaming down his cheeks. It was his first time being a father. Though he couldn't see, he carefully felt the child's features as if trying to engrave this moment into his soul. Nina, look, he seems to be smiling. I glanced weakly at that bright red little monkey. That brat, he really was laughing. Mama, I'm finally out. The world's a bit colder now, but the air is so fresh. Daddy's hold feels so cozy. I'll be Daddy's guide dog from now on. No, guide kid. I couldn't help but laugh, and tears flowed as well. In this life, we all survived. And we lived well. The extreme cold ended completely a year later. Temperatures returned to normal, ice and snow melted, and everything revived. The city began to rebuild, and order slowly returned. The Goo family was utterly ruined by that disaster. Old Master Goo didn't make it through that winter. Sophie's leg was ruined, leaving her a true cripple who wandered the streets all day, raving and begging. As for Victor, thanks to the supplies we had stockpiled through the bitter cold and the investments he steered remotely online, he quickly amassed his first pot of gold. Everyone said that although Victor was sightless, his mind was razor sharp, and his luck was absurdly good, he somehow always managed to steer clear of risk. Only I knew that it was our little strategist, Andy, who deserved the credit. Dad, don't buy that plot, there's an ancient tomb underneath. If you do, construction will stop for archaeology. Dad, that uncle is a con man. He's planning to take the money and run. Victor hung on his son's every word and spoiled Andy rotten. I, meanwhile, renovated the derelict building again and turned it into a real mansion. The basement that once saved our lives had been converted into a wine cellar and home theater. But I still kept that hot spring. It was the starting point of our rebirth, and the guardian deity of our home. That day, I stood on the balcony and watched Victor playing with Andy in the garden. One big, one small, their laughter bright and clear. Sunlight fell on them, warm and radiant. I thought of the afternoon when I tore up the divorce papers, and of that night of wind and snow. If I had signed back then, if I hadn't heard my son's plea, perhaps by now I would have been nothing but a skeleton. Fate is a strange thing. Andy suddenly looked up and waved at me. Mom. Come down and play. Dad says he's going to teach me archery. I smiled and called back, coming. No matter what storms the future may bring. As long as the family is together, we have nothing to fear. This is the best possible ending.